grateful. I want to introduce Esther Baila Schwartz, who lives in Muncie. All her classes are on Torah Anytime, Chazak, and Inspire by Wire. So I'm so privileged. And I want to thank Naomi Batya, who actually got us her sister, Esther Baila Schwartz. I know every one of them is holy. Thank you so much. Okay. Naomi, is she on? Yes, there you are. Go ahead. Thank you so much. I'm going to put myself on mute. I just want to make sure we hear you properly.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Could you make it a little bit louder?
Not really. I'm
okay.
on
I think it's okay. I think it's okay.
Is this better? Can you hear me now,
fine.
well?
Yeah, we're good. Go ahead.
Okay. So, good morning, everybody. My name is Esther Baila Schwartz. I am incredibly grateful to my sister Naomi Batya for telling me about this. I checked in. I called it, I guess I should say, a little bit early because I didn't know what time I was starting, and I was really so inspired. It's an unbelievable Kiddush Hashem what you're doing. I'm sure up in Shamayim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has tremendous nachas ruach. So Naomi told me that really I could speak about anything that I find inspiring. So I want to share with you some thoughts about the tefillah of Az Yashir. And I'll tell you why I want to do that. We need, as you know, as well as I do, as much help as possible to navigate this Gullah successfully. And what better place to turn to figure out how to navigate this Gullah the best place to turn is to what our ancestors learned about their Gullah after their Geula, namely Yetzias Mitzrayim and Az Yashir. There is so much nechama in that tefillah, so much guidance, so much hope, so much comfort. What can I tell you? It is such an unbelievably powerful tefillah. And I want to tell you an interesting backdrop to how I even developed such a relationship. I've been living in Muncie for Kanai Nahara 30 years, and I've been zocha to be giving these classes in Muncie. I also teach in Passaic. In Passaic, my classes are filmed for Torah Anytime. If any of you are interested, by the way, if you ever want to go on to Torah Anytime to find my classes, if you find that you enjoy my style, I asked a Shaila before I went on because I don't speak to mixed audiences. So Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky directed us that if I'm hard to find, it will not be a breach of my tznius. So you have to you have to register as a woman to be able to find my classes. So that's just what I'm telling you now. If you want to listen to them on the phone via Torah Anytime's phone number, I'm number 36. But either way, so that was just an aside. So I've been giving these classes in Muncie and Passaic for, as I said, for 30 years. And one of the classes that I've been zocha to be doing all these years is classes on tefillah. And one year, probably, I don't even know, maybe it was 10 years ago, 8 years ago, we wound down for the summer. I go away to camps. I don't teach over the summer. And I said to the women, what tefillah should we do when we reconvene in Elul? And one of the women said, well, what about Az Yashir? And I thought, oh, no. I have no relationship with Az Yashir. I really don't want to teach Az Yashir. But you know what? We aim to please. We try to make the customers happy. So I said, okay, you know what? I don't really have a relationship with the tefillah. I'll try. If I can prepare it, if I can come up with a nice, I'll do it. If not, we'll do something else. Well, all I could tell you is that I fell madly in love with this tefillah, madly in love. In fact, I told the women recently that I really want to teach it again because the more I'm zocha to daven it, the more I understand the depth of it and the messages and the nechama inherent in it. And I want to tell you something. The more I think I know, the more I realize I didn't even scrape the tip of the iceberg. But what we're going to do today is not even the tefillah itself. We may touch the tefillah itself, but really what we're going to focus on today is the paragraph before Az Yashir. I'm using my Art Scroll Siddur. If any of you have a Siddur in front of you, it's page 103, and it's the Psukim from Shemos, Perek Yud Dalid, Psukim, I can't see him. I'm not wearing my glasses. Shmos Yudalid, okay, you'll have to look at it yourself. I mean, I am wearing my glasses, but the print is too small for me to see it. Okay, so we're going to start with that paragraph. Vayosha Hashem bayom hahu es Yisrael miyad Mitzrayim. And Hashem saved on that day Yisrael from the hand of Mitzrayim. Okay, what do we need the word from the hand of? The pasuk could have said very easily, Vayosha Hashem bayom hahu es Yisrael mi Mitzrayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved Yisrael on that day from Mitzrayim. Why miyad Mitzrayim? Okay, so the answer I want to share with you is a very powerful answer. You are probably all familiar with the expression, he has them in the palm of his hand. They are eating out of the palm of his hand. Being in the palm of someone's hand connotes control. We were completely under the control of Mitzrayim. We could basically not even breathe without their permission. Certainly not take a drink or rest or relax or schmooze. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved us on that day from the control of Mitzrayim. Vayosh Hashem bayom hahu es Yisrael miyad Mitzrayim. He took us out from under the control of Mitzrayim. Now, when I say this tefillah, I think, when I'm zochat have kavanah when I'm saying it, I replace Mitzrayim with the current powers that be, world opinion, the United Nations, the American government, whatever it might be, whom we feel we are under their influence, under their control. We have to curry favor with them. That's how I get so much nechama from this tefillah, because if you replace Mitzrayim with our current oppressors, then the message is incredibly powerful. Vayar Yisrael es Mitzrayim meis al sfas hayam. And the Yisrael, the Yidden, saw the Egyptians dead on the shore of the sea. But listen to this, sweetie pies. It doesn't say es ha-Mitzrayim. Vayar Yisrael es ha-Mitzrayim meis al sfas hayam. That's how the Art Scroll Siddur translates it, but it says Mitzrayim. They saw Mitzrayim dead on the shores of the Yam Suf. And 1 second, please. Okay, I'm sorry. I want to have the rest of the class in the zechus of my mother-in-law. My husband just walked in. That's why I interrupted in the middle, that she was rushed to the hospital. So for Yeshua's for Peril Bas Rivka, I'm sorry I interrupted in the middle, but my husband wasn't supposed to come home, and since he came home, I knew there was an emergency. So for Yeshua's for Peril Bas Rivka, we should be zolcha to clarity as to how to help her, because she's not young. Okay, let's get back to this. It's a little bit hard for me, but I'm going to do it. And Lefum Tzara Agra. Okay, so it says we saw Mitzrayim dead, not the Mitzrayim. If we saw the physical Mitzrayim dead on the shore of the Yam. Instead of saying the Mitzrayim, it says Mitzrayim. Now, the way I say this over in my classes, this immediately reminded me of a bounce house. And the women looked at me and they said, huh? And I said, what? It doesn't remind you of a bounce house? They said, no. I said, oh my goodness, how odd. How can it not remind you of a bounce house? I'll tell you what I mean by a bounce house. I told you that we go to camp every summer. So one of the camp families brings along a bounce house for the children to play with. It's actually a bounce house that she attaches to a hose, and it becomes like a whole water matzav for the children. So when she blows it up with an electric pump, of course, she blows it up, and it stands there all tall and powerful and proud, bright colors, taking up a big part of the front lawn of the camp, and the children are jumping and squealing and sliding and having the time of their lives. And the bounce house is really it for the day. And then when the activity is over, she unplugs the plug from the outlet, and we watch as the bounce house slowly collapses onto itself into a heap of nothingness on the grass. The bounce house collapses into a heap of nothingness on the grass. Now, because I'm a public speaker, I tend to look at the world through the eyes of how can this enhance the class. And I realized to myself that this bounce house that then gets unplugged and collapses into a heap of nothingness is such a wonderful mushal to what happened in Mitzrayim and will happen to our enemies today. Mitzrayim was so full of itself, so on top of this world, so sure that they were invincible and completely omnipotent. And when they say jump, for the rest of eternity, the entire world will ask, how high? But it was all an illusion. It was all a mirage. The moment HaKadosh Baruch Hu unplugged the plug, so to speak, from the outlet, Mitzrayim collapsed into a useless blob on the ground. Vayar Yisrael es Mitzrayim meis al sfas hayam. They saw that Mitzrayim and all the power that Mitzrayim seemed to wield had only been an illusion. And now Mitzrayim was a useless heap. We never hear of Mitzrayim again. They don't matter at all. It had all been an illusion. It had all been a mirage. And the same is true of all the enemies of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael today. At the moment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says Dayenu, at the moment HaKadosh Baruch Hu says you're not needed anymore, the goal has been reached. My children have accomplished what they need to accomplish in this gullus. All the powers that be today will dissolve into a heap of nothingness, just like Mitzrayim did. We do not have to take them seriously. They have no innate power. They have no innate clout. They mean nothing at all. Nothing at all. Mitzrayim was just the means of enabling Klal Yisrael to reach the level of being Zoche, to be the Am HaNivchar, the chosen people, the partners of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When we stood at Har Sinai, we became the partners of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Torah is the control panel for the world, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it over to us. We have the keys to all bracha coming to this world. That is a very, very, very powerful place to be. And in order to be zocha to that, we had to go through Mitzrayim. So we went through Mitzrayim, and at the moment that we reached the place that we were ready to become the partners of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said goodbye to Mitzrayim, and they ceased to be of any consequence at all. So Vayar Yisrael es Mitzrayim meis al sfas hayam. They saw Mitzrayim and all their, what they thought was the power and the clout and the control of Mitzrayim disintegrate into nothingness. And soon we will see that with the powers that be today. They're all a bunch of hot air, quite literally, and will disintegrate into nothingness at all. Vayar Yisrael es hayod hagadola asher asa Hashem de Mitzrayim. And Yisrael saw the hand that is great that HaKadosh Baruch Hu inflicted upon Mitzrayim. Now, I want to share with you two pshatim about the word Yod HaGadola. The first one is from the Chafetz Chaim. Vayar Yisrael es hayod HaGadola. The Chafetz Chaim says the long hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Klal Yisrael saw the long hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, meaning what? They looked back, like we will look back when Mashiach comes, and they saw the entire Gullus retroactively with absolute absolute clarity, and they saw how HaKadosh Baruch Hu had been manipulating everything. Nothing had been happenstance, nothing had been chance, nothing had been coincidence. The V'yar Yisrael es Hayad HaGadola, they saw how it had been HaKadosh Baruch Hu all along. And like I like to say to the women in my classes, when we listen to Megillas Yitzias America, which is a name I made up, and then I got a phone call from someone who listens to my classes from another country. She said, I want to be there too. Don't call it Megillas Yitzias America, but I'm using America as an umbrella term for all the Galiosa that we are in today. When we listen to Megillas Yitzias America, we'll keep, like I figure we're not going to be allowed to talk, like we don't talk when we listen to Megillas Esther. When we hear about the gullahs we went through, we're going to keep poking each other in the ribs and saying, oh my, now I understand why that happened, and now I understand why that happened, and now I understand why that happened. Everything is going to fall into place, and everything is going to be so perfect, which leads to the second pshat in V'yar Yisrael es Yad HaGadola. Yad HaGadola refers to the hand of chesed. We would have thought it should have been Yad HaChazaka, the strong hand, the hand of din. But no, it says Yad HaGadola, the hand of Chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When they looked back at their gullus from the perspective of absolute clarity, they saw that everything that happened in their gullus had been absolute Chesed. What does that mean? I don't know. What could be chesed about babies being cemented into brick walls? And the answer into that is I don't know, but they did. And when Mashiach comes, we're going to look back at our gullus, all the pain and all the suffering and all the agony and the anguish and the human heartbreak, and we're going to realize that it had all been chesed. Vayar Yisrael es Hayad HaGadola Asher Asa Hashem b'Mitzrayim. They saw the long hand of chesed. And notice that it does not say Asher Asa Elokim b'Mitzrayim. Hashem is midas harachamim. They realized Elokim is midas hadin. They realized that everything had been rachamim and everything had been chesed. Vayiru ha'am es Hashem, and the people feared HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Again, the word feared does not seem appropriate over here. We would have thought that it would have said, and they loved HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? Because they saw that it was all goodness and kindness. So the simple pshat is they were more in awe. But I want to share with you a different pshat, which I love very much. Vayiru ha'am es Hashem, and they feared HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They feared losing the clarity that everything is good and everything is perfect and everything is a gift of love from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They feared losing the clarity because the clarity felt so good. And we all know that they lost it very quickly. But at that moment of absolute perfection, they knew that it's so painful to live life without clarity, and they wish they could hold on to that clarity forever. And we say in Kriya Shematz at the end of the paragraph of Vahaya Im Shamoa, we say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give us the land to us and our children. Ki mei hashamayim al haaretz. We are going to be living a heavenly existence on this earth. Ki mei hashamayim al haaretz. And what does that mean, a heavenly existence on this earth? We're going to be physical people, but we're going to be living from the perspective of shamayim, which is absolute clarity. There'll be no more confusion, no more anxiety, nothing. We'll see the perfection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It will be so beautiful. Vayiru ha'am es Hashem, they feared missing that clarity. We crave that clarity, and halavai, soon we will be zocheh to have it. Vaya aminu b'Hashem u'v'Moshe avdo. And they had faith in Hashem and in his servant Moshe. Now, again, Why did they have faith at that point? Faith at that point, they had knowledge. They should have said Vayedu. They knew. They saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu clearly. They pointed to him, Kemat. Zeh Keli Vaya Anvehu. Why does it mean Vaya? Why does it say Vaya Aminu? They had faith. Another way of understanding Vaya Aminu is they trusted. At that moment, they promised themselves that they are going to retire from their role of judge and jury, and they are going to trust HaKadosh Baruch Hu implicitly. Now, we know that sadly that didn't last. Right? It didn't last because it's very hard when you're human beings on this earth to trust so implicitly. But that's why it says they trusted at that moment. They promised themselves, I will never question the perfection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu again. And this tefillah is what they felt when their galus came to an end. And Az Yashir Moshe Uvenei Yisrael Sashira Hazos Lashem. At that moment of clarity, at that moment of perfection, they sang HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Not before, because it's very hard to sing when you're in pain. But at that moment, they sang HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vayomru Leimar, and they spoke saying. Now, if you look inside the tefillah, you will realize that those words Vayomru Leimar and they spoke saying are not necessary. They seem to break the flow of the tefillah. It would have seemed to make more sense to say Az Yashir Moshe Uvenei Yisrael Sashira Zos Lashem Ashira Lashem Ki Ga'oga. I will sing to Hashem because he was exalted over the arrogant. What do we need the words Vayomru Leimar saying and they spoke saying? But the words are there. So who were they talking to and what were they saying? And the Mefarshim tell us they were talking to us, all future generations, and they were telling us, sweethearts, listen to us, trust us, hold on to our words. One day you will also sing and dance about everything you went through. They didn't sing and dance only for the Yeshua. They sang and danced for the Galus as well. Vayomru Leimor, they were reaching down through the centuries. They were reaching down through the generations to us, and they were telling us, be strong. One day you will sing as well. And I want to end with one last point. Ashira Lashem Ki Ga'oga'a. That's in the singular. I will sing to Hashem. And one of the ways of understanding it is that each of the individual people who went through Kriyas Yamsuf, although they all sang Az Yashir together with Ruach HaKodesh, obviously how do they all know the words? But they all sang it together. Ashira, it's in the singular. They all sang their personal Shira to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the personal pain that each one of them as an individual had suffered. The Galus Mitzrayim was made up of unique individuals, and each one of them personally thanked HaKadosh Baruch Hu because each one of them saw how their personal trials and travails led to their personal geula, and that is a message to us as well. When Mashiach comes, halavai today, each one of us will sing as an individual to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for each of our personal journeys. For each of our personal journeys as we tried our best to navigate this very complicated and difficult terrain. When Mashiach comes, Ashira Lashem, each one of us as an individual is going to sing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In the meantime, we have to hold tight. And in the meantime, I want to share with you, this is one last thought, not from Az Yashir, but from the Tefillah of Hodu. At the end of Hodu, we say, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, Hama'alcha me'eretz Mitzrayim. I am Hashem, your God, who lifted you out of Mitzrayim. Now, really, we're used to the phraseology, Asher Hotzeicha be'eretz Mitzrayim. I took you out. Why? Hama'alcha, I lifted you up. We didn't fly out of Mitzrayim. We walked out of Mitzrayim. So what does it mean, Hama'alcha? I lifted you up. I want to share with you a very beautiful machshava. This is my own machshava, but I think it's very, very emistic. In Mitzrayim, we were at the bottom of a black pit. We had zero control over anything. Like I said in the beginning, we couldn't even take a drink if we wanted to. We were helpless and we were hopeless, and we were 100% vulnerable to the whims of the evil, barbaric, sadistic Mitzrayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu lifted us out from the bottom of the totem pole. We weren't at the bottom of the totem pole. We were in the mud underneath the totem pole. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu lifted us out from there. Hama'alcha, I lifted you out from nothingness. And I made you my partners. We are the partners of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yisrael v'oraisa v'kudsha b'richu chad hu. Yisrael and the Torah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu are one. We're not a threesome. We're a onesome, which is a word that I made up because it's the only way to describe what we are with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Torah. Harchev picha v'amalehu. Open up your mouths and I will fill it. Anochi Hashem Elokecha Hama'alcha me'eretz Mitzrayim. I lifted you up from the pit of helpless nothingness at the bottom of the mud of Mitzrayim, and I gave you such power, I gave you such influence, I gave you such clout. Now open up your mouths and I will fill them with all the bracha you asked for. We have so much power, we have so much clout. And I want to tell you something. Between my sister Naomi and I, we had a little bit of cross communications. I'd forgotten that I was supposed to do this morning. And when Naomi called me this morning to remind me, I was pre-coffee, and I said, Naomi, I can't. I forget it. And then I said to myself, but I'm the partner of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and this world needs such Yeshuos. I can do this, and I'll bring even more Yeshuos to Klal Yisrael because it's a little bit harder for me than usual. That is our power. And you're davening together and saying Tehillim every day. We will never know until Mashiach comes how much bracha we're bringing to this world. So I want to end with thanking you for sharing this opportunity with me. I hope I was able to generate within you a love for this tefillah, to turn to it for nechama, to know that one day we will dance and sing, and nobody has power, and it doesn't matter who's in the White House, and it doesn't matter who's yapping what in the United Nations. They're all a big, fat bunch of nothing. What matters is how you and I live our lives today as the partners of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, bringing bracha to this world. And halavai, soon all of us, with all of Klal Yisrael, we will meet together when Mashiach comes, and we'll all be so happy to meet each other personally, and we'll laugh and sing and dance together. How it was all so true. It was all really good and really wonderful, and at that point, the clarity will last forever. And halavai v'siyata d'shmaya, it will happen today. Be gebenched, all of you, and that's all. Be gebenched. Bye.
Amen, amen, amen. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Amen, amen. It should be Keharif Ayin, should be in the blink of an eye. Now, Bezrat Hashem. Just before we continue, just before everybody gets off, just quickly, we are going to, Basia is just going to read for us. My father